British section of the Kowloon Canton Railway ran for some 22 miles from the Kowloon terminus at Chim Sa Choy to the Chinese border at Lo Wu. This section opened in 1910, and the Chinese section on to Canton 1 year later. The impressive Kowloon terminus at Chim Sa Choy opened in 1915. The last steam engines, XWD 280s, had all been replaced by General Motors diesels by 1963. This film shows the line as it was between the late 1960s and the early 1980s. In the 1970s, traffic consisted of around 17 return local passenger trains daily to Lo Wu and 2 or 3 freight trains from China. Number 56, IB Trevor, is passing the signal box at the Kowloon station throat. All the named diesel engines are named after former general managers of the railway, except numbers 51 and 52, which were named after the governor, Sir Alexander Grantham, and his wife, Lady Maureen. Number 51, Sir Alexander, the first diesel on the line, was built in 1954 to a General Motors design by the Clyde Engineering Company in Australia. Number 58, a 1961 General Motors product, is arriving at platform 3. Platforms 1 and 2 were goods platforms, and a further siding provided direct access from the goods wagons to junks and lighters. The trains were well patronised, and the station concourse could get very crowded at busy times. The coaching stock was built to a very generous loading gauge, the first class being quite comfortable. The third class was rather basic though. This shot must have been taken just after a festival, as the track was not usually so strewn with rubbish as this. We will now follow the line from Kowloon to the border area. Electric signalling had been installed at Kowloon Station in 1963. Double track extended from Kowloon to Hung Hom, where the line's shed and works were originally situated. The second line was usually used for light engine workings, or holding freight trains, as seen here. Hung Hom, where the freight yards and carriage sidings were situated, was controlled by a manually operated signal box. From Hung Hom, the line was single, except for passing loops, the first of which was at Mong Kok, where a freight was waiting. Mong Kok had a standard station building, but unusually was also provided with a separate signal box. The sidings here were used for unloading livestock from China. Immediately north of Mong Kok Station, the line entered the shortest tunnel on the line, a mere 150 feet. down signals were very prominently situated, high above the tunnel's mouth. After passing through Kowloon Tong, the line entered the Beacon Hill Tunnel. This 7,212-foot long tunnel, by far the largest on the line, was the only engineering work not built to provide for eventual double-track working. After leaving the tunnel, the line ran through the Sha Tin Valley, where it crossed the five-arch masonry bridge over the Xingmun River, the largest river in the new territories. Sha Tin Station, some 6.5 miles from Kowloon, was pleasantly shaded by some large banyan trees and was provided with 2 passing loops. North of Sha Tin, the railway followed the shorelines of Tide Cove and Tolo Harbour. After traversing the 329-foot long tunnel number 3, the line entered the University Station, formerly known as Ma Lu Soi, the site of the Chinese University. University Station was built around 1960. The down platform provides the passengers with very little space. From University, the line continues to hug the shoreline. Number 56 is just entering Tai Po Gao Station. The signalling here and at University Station was electrified in 1970. Prior to the communist takeover in China, this had been an important station, as there was a regular ferry service across Mirs Bay to the Chinese mainland from here. The line next passes Island House, the residence of the District Commissioner, New Territories. After passing the Tai Po Typhoon Shelter, the line enters Tai Po Market Station. The station building is most unusual in that it is built in the style of a Chinese temple. It is now a small railway museum. Immediately after leaving the station, the line crosses the Lam Chun River on a quite substantial viaduct. After Tai Po Market, the line is very rural. Sir Alexander is running alongside the main water supply pipeline from China. About half a mile south of Fan Ling Station, the line to Wo Hop Shek Cemetery branches off. This was the only branch on the line. From 1912 to 1928, a 2-foot gauge line to Shatta Kok ran from Fan Ling. 2 of the line's former engines can still be seen at work at the Victoria's Sugar Mill in the Philippines. This was the last crossing point before the border station of Lo Wu. The last coach is a Chinese mail van. Sheung Shui, the last station before the border, was the only one without a crossing link. It was much used by golfers in earlier days. Number 59, an 1800 horsepower General Motors design, arrived on the line in 1966. After Sheung Shui, the line entered the closed border area before crossing the Samchun River into China. The line was very heavily used at festival times, and for the Chungyong and Qingming festivals, special trains were run to Wo Hop Shek at the end of the small branch line. There is a huge cemetery here, and people go to clean the graves of their ancestors on these special days. The first special train for Wo Hop Shek left at about 6 o'clock in the morning and is here seen leaving the main line for the branch. The previous day's celebrants have, as usual, left an awful lot of rubbish behind. The station consisted of a platform and a run-round loop and was flag signalled. In earlier times, dead bodies had been the usual traffic down this branch. The way to the cemetery is lined with flower and refreshment stalls. The cemetery, the biggest in Hong Kong, covers a huge area. It was interesting to see that a water crane was still extant here. There were up to 6 arrivals and departures. These special trains ran express from Kowloon, only stopping to cross, if necessary. This rather graphic sign was used extensively where footpaths crossed the line. During 1975 and 1976, power-operated barriers were installed at all level crossings. However, time moves on, and it was decided to move the main works from Hung Hom to Ho Tung Lao near Sha Tin, prior to relocating the terminus near the old workshop site. Inter alia, this meant laying temporary track to a new engine shed on reclaimed land at Hung Hom. Two Dodge trucks had been converted into a rail bus in 1947. Here we see one half of it attached to one half of its comma-built successor. These were used by permanent way gangs. On a later occasion, both halves of the comma rail bus have been parked at the new Ho Tung Lao workshops. The Dodge rail bus was by now awaiting the scrapman. Freight traffic continued to increase, and in 1974, Clyde Engineering built number 60. 2,000 horsepower General Motors designed engine to handle the heavier freight trains. By 1974, new road bridges had been built over the tracks at Hung Hom, and the spur on the left had been laid to the shortly to be opened new terminus there. The main line to the new terminus is in the foreground and leads through the double-track cut-and-cover Ho Man Tin tunnel. The new line was ready for the old main line to be slewed across to join it when the new terminus was opened. Finally, the new station was ready, and on 29th November 1975, the last trains ran from the old Kowloon terminus. Number 54, R. Baker, had the honour of taking the last scheduled passenger train from the old station. The general manager, Mr. Reg Gregory, was there to photograph the event. Number 53, H.P. Winslow, then removed all the remaining stock from the station. Then, after the last arrival had come in, number 51, Sir Alexander, had the sad duty of removing the empty coaches, this being the very last train movement at the 60-year-old station. With the last train gone, work commenced at Home and Tin to slew the main line over so that all trains would in future work into the new Hung Hom terminus. Work continued throughout the night, so that all was ready for the first test engine to go through at dawn. The new Kowloon terminus at Hung Hom had its platforms on the ground level and a concourse above that, the whole concrete monstrosity being topped with a large car park. A full service to the new station started immediately, and the first arrival is seen here. Thereafter, trains arrived and departed in accordance with the new timetable. Interestingly, a transverser was provided at the end of the platforms, so that arriving engines could be released on any vacant road. Large though it is, the first floor concourse is not big enough to hold the huge crowds which use the railway on festivals and other holidays. Escalators take passengers from the concourse down to the platform level. This view shows the station with one of the early departures on the opening day. Another opening day picture shows how the railway has been squeezed by the maze of new roads in this area. The 1970s had seen a big build-up in freight traffic arriving from China, destined for both Hong Kong and for re-export, usually by sea. In order to deal with the increased freight traffic, a goods yard had been built on the seaward side of the new station, with transshipment facilities for loading direct to junks and lighters. Typhoons have frequently affected the railway, the usual problem being washouts caused by flash floods or unusually high tides on the coastal section. One of the worst of these was the collapse of the bridge over the Xingmun River at Dai Wai on 25th of August 1976, which necessitated a complete rebuild of this large bridge. Luckily, sufficient suitable bridge girders were available in the colony, and in the surprisingly short time of 6 weeks, the replacement bridge was operational. In the meantime, a shuttle service was worked from Kowloon to a temporary wooden platform at Dai Wai. From Dai Wai, buses took passengers to Sha Tin, where they boarded a connecting service to the border. This bridge collapse also caused problems with mail and freight traffic. The sidings at Fan Ling were used to handle the mail, while Wo Hop Shek Station was utilized to unload cattle and pigs from China. April 1979 saw the reintroduction of through passenger services from Canton to Kowloon. This is the first through service train and, as became normal, was headed by a Chinese DF3 class diesel throughout. Luckily, Kowloon was provided with a turntable, which enabled the single-ended Chinese locomotive to turn round. Until the advent of the Chinese engines, this turntable had seen very little use. Due to locomotive shortages, a Chinese DF2 class diesel was hired to help out. It is seen here in tandem with the KCR engine, passing the new pig unloading sidings at Hung Hom. The railway was changing fast. First, much of the line to Tai Po Market was doubled, and then a decision was made to electrify the whole line. (1980 and 1981 saw further change on the railway. In preparation for full electrification, a temporary station was built at Mong Kok, and an entirely new station was built at Kowloon to provide an interchange with the new underground railway. In April 1981, the old single-bore tunnel under Beacon Hill was replaced by a new double-bore tunnel. The entrance to the old tunnel and the alignment of the original track can be seen in the background. New modern high platform stations were built to replace the old country stations, such as Sha Tin. The racecourse was also provided with its own station on a new loop line. By this time, diesel-haul passenger traffic was nearly finished, and the first electrified trains ran between Kowloon and Sha Tin on May the 6th, 1982. The Metropolitan Camel EMUs were stabled at a modern depot near to the new racecourse station. All local passenger services were electrified on July the 16th, 1983. The final diesel passenger train being a special to Tai Po on July the 23rd. This train was headed by a recently outshot number 51, which had been the first diesel on the line in 1955, and banked by its equally old sister, number 52. Diesel passenger services were not quite finished though, as the, by now, twice daily, through express to Canton, continued to be hauled by Chinese diesels. The last diesel special returned double-headed, a trifle late, as number 52 had given problems. This special brings this film and the old Kowloon Canton Railway to an end.